So hello everyone and welcome to another CiC monthly webinar. It's the first of the year for 2023. I always find these webinars particularly exciting because this is where we start to look at the kind of trends in mental health and the things that we're seeing across the globe, really, across the organizations we support. And this is a real opportunity for us as an organization to learn from all of you as well. If you've been to especially my first of the year sessions before, you'll know I canvass a lot of responses from you all of an audience. So to anyone watching on the recording, the thanks goes to the people here who have joined us live as well. As I said at the beginning, please do interact with the session, type your questions and your comments out in the chat. If you want to ask something privately, you can send it to me as a private message. That way I will still read it out and answer your question, but I won't read out your name or anything that would identify you. So, what are we looking at when we're talking about mental health at work in 2023? I'm hoping lots of you have got some ideas as well, but I've put together our kind of top trends that we see and things that we're going to be focusing on as an organization. I think no matter where you are in the globe at the moment, there's particular financial stress going on, this cost of living. It's a phrase that I've struggled with over the years, this idea that living costs money. Of course it does, realistically we understand that, but it starts to put a bit of a price on it when we start getting squashed a little bit in our kind of financial freedom, I guess, and financial capabilities. And my question to all of you is a green here in the bottom of the slide. What do you see as the emerging pressures or needs regarding mental health at the work, particularly in your workplace? Let us know in the chat of the things that you've started to see and hear going on. It does so happen that largely the audience we get for these events are people that are somehow either thinking about their own mental health or largely working to support the mental health of others. I've seen a few people represented here in the chat introducing themselves as well-being managers or working in human resources. We've also got a few people from the different organizations we look after across the globe, and this financial stress has become really, really key. I've got someone here privately saying still burnout, struggling with long COVID. Yeah, I haven't put that in here, but the physical health issues are a real big one as well. I've heard this one as well that's just come through privately, being asked to do more with less. Again, I think that financial stress comes in as well. Manjit said the cost of living and any intent for introducing hybrid models. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a bit more detail. Sam's put one of my favorite topics here, and it's not an easy topic, but isolation and loneliness. And, isolation and loneliness affects us in so many different ways, particularly when we're having those kind of workplace concerns that we feel no one else can support. I've dropped a link there in the chat to our YouTube channel because we did one of these sessions just on isolation and loneliness that you might find interesting. Volume of work increasing, says Rhiannon. Miranda adds, managing organizational change and department reorganizations. Yes, lots of that happening. Lots of organizations having to restructure to fit new working models, and also organizations are feeling that financial stress just as well as we are as individuals in most cases as well, particularly those of you in the more public sector as well. Amanda says increased line manager well-being champion support for staff in the workplace, which has a knock-on impact for capacity of staff, which then increases burnout risk. Yeah, short staffing, poorly managed changes I'm seeing here, trying to find an established routine when working from home. Yeah. Laura's saying here, my organization is going through serious financial crisis. That's a real scary position to be in sometimes as well. Michelle's put one in here, burnout, increased workload and difficult subject matter, animal welfare / protection, Michelle works in. And you'll look here, one of my bullet points is ISO 45003, which just rolls off the tongue. But we'll talk about that in a bit more detail because that, really addresses those kind of psychological impacts that our work has on us. Yeah. John says agile working, people can hide away. Working from home, more stuff there. Coping with various train strikes, says Evelyn. Yeah. Sam says back-to-back meetings. And look, yeah, as I said at the beginning of this, the time for this starts at 4 p.m. London time. We tick over to 4 p.m. and then suddenly people rush in. That's a sign to me that people are coming straight from other meetings. There's no break, no spot in between. Great, lots of really good ideas, and we'll come back to a lot of those later. Oh yeah, Nicholas has spoken on here, the intensity of online meetings. Perhaps we'll discuss that in a little more detail when we look at kind of hybrid working models. I'd love to hear more about what you mean by that intensity there, if we can. So I've put a few that I think resonate similarly with a lot of what you're saying here. That financial stress, sure, burnout remaining a prominent concern, and we'll touch on that, of course. Returning to the office, settling into hybrid models I've put here. It's really, really difficult here. Um, Work-life balance, still people struggling with that. And I think that that's tied in with burnout and the hybrid models and working from home or the office. And then finally, yeah, that piece on organizational responsibility, really. Where is it that my psychological health is impacted because of the work I do? Not because of who I am as an individual, but because of the role that I'm in. Someone said here privately, for anyone struggling physically or mentally, there is a benefit you can apply for, PIP. You can still work whilst claiming this. It's a really important reminder for those of you in the UK, at least. Yeah. Paul says, having to work with long-winded, inefficient processes to get the work done. Yeah, I feel that one as well, Paul. Thanks for sharing it. Fiona's added here, hybrid working and frustration of staff about those who don't come in. We start to get this kind of us and them split, and we'll explore that a little bit more. Yeah, thank you, Fiona. Managing expectations and trying to remember a pre-COVID world. Yeah. So I've put a few bits of information here about financial stress and the cost of living and what it does, but I'd love to hear from all of you in the chat what this does to impact your well-being at work. I put the YouTube link there again because we've got a webinar on our YouTube that we presented around this financial stress and cost of living. Yeah. Ellie says, agree with Fiona, especially when some staff must perform some of their role in the office. Yeah. You know, it's really come to light the differences, the inequality in our working models that we have with some roles in our organizations. So back to financial stress and the cost of living. Let me know in the chat, where does this impact you? I chose this photo of the Jenga tower because well, this is, I guess, coming from personal experience, but that's kind of how finances feel to me at the moment. Like I'm just about hanging on. I'm just about okay with how things are. But if someone moved one of those blocks that's holding the financial situation together, the whole thing comes tumbling down. I think individuals will carry this pressure into work. You know, work is where we get our money from. So work is linked and involved in this quite literally. But even just as a background stress, it starts to make me feel less safe in the world if I don't have some sort of, I don't know, financial cushion to fall back on. Um, I was reading a really interesting research piece around the migrant crises, both in the US and Central America and in Europe as well. And one thing that someone said really struck me. They said most people, when they're thinking about kind of migration, they don't put themselves in the position of what it's like to have nothing to fall back on, to kind of have no things. You know, even if I lost my job, I've got a flat that I can sell or rent out a room in. I've got a car that I can sell. I've got these other things. But sometimes when we're under that financial stress and pressure, that lack of safety comes to us as well. And it can really feel like we're much more at risk in the world. Simon says records accessible for all, but still staff asking where to locate this. Okay, so some really specific concerns there. Here we are. Manda says corporate realignment will undoubtedly lead to job losses and stress for all, those who are leaving and the increased load for those who are left. Yeah. Cara says worrying just about the future of my finances. Yeah, many of us aren't trying to just survive. We're trying to make it in the world. We're trying to create some sort of wealth for our family or to be able to support a family or to think about the next generations or even just our own future and retirement. Yeah. Georgie then says it kind of leads to that constant worry about something. It's either work or personal related, but it sticks around. Anita saying depleted savings. Yeah, so seeing that safety net going away. Kate says my landlord is selling my flat, so I have to fund another place to live, which is very difficult when you have pets. And another level of financial stress as rents are going up since I last moved. So there's high levels of anxiety there. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Worrying about my personal and work pension, Will I have enough due to value dropping? Yeah, uncertainty around what will happen. I think this uncertainty term is going to come up quite a lot. It's kind of behind a lot of the topics that we're dealing with at the moment. And look, we've had a long time of it, and we'll touch on that in more detail. Yeah, Nikki says, wondering how much more I can cut out or cut down on. Yeah, absolutely. And then do I get to the point where I've cut everything joyful out of my life and I'm just kind of pushing myself to work all the time? Yeah. Um, Financial stress can also change how we see our work and our career. Instead of it being something that brings value to my life, it's something that only has a monetary value and that, I'm kind of struggling with, I guess. And that affects our value overall. And by value there, I put it in kind of quote marks. I mean, how well I value myself, but how I see others valuing me as well. When we talk about a cost of living crisis and individuals being affected, one of the emotional impacts of that is me feeling worthless. Absolutely. I'm sure he said amen, Harry. Um, Sam said, worry, Ari, having to work until I drop. Will I be able to continue? Yeah. And I think that there's some combination effects here with financial stress and just general burnout going on as well. Yeah, absolutely. Simon saying, I hear you there, Sam. It's really nice to hear you all supporting each other in the chat. Keep it going. And then look, it brings additional stress to the family, to your home situation, whatever it might be. If I'm struggling financially, I'm probably not having a nice, fun, joyful time in my family life. To those of you that are struggling financially and are still managing to have a joyful, happy family or home life, well done. You're holding on to a lot for people when you do something like that. Yeah. Oh, someone said there in the chat, I hear you. Sometimes I adopt a good enough approach, which can give me more time for self-care. Yeah, I think that's really good. I think we do get a bit kind of hung up on doing things perfectly and this perfectionism. Yeah. Amanda says here, as well-being or mental health champions, we support many peers and colleagues as well as personal struggles. This in itself can be difficult and very draining, no matter what emotional resilience training and practice. Absolutely. We run quite a few what we call peer-to-peer support networks here at CiC. And one of the things that I'm really clear on from the outset is that those people should not just be left alone to go and do that within the organization. So in fact, all of our programs come with built-in clinical supervision. So just like a therapist or a counselor, you will have regular supervision with a clinician so that you're cared for and supported as well. Yeah. And yeah, of course, as Amanda says, those roles are always going to be on top of your usual role. I don't know anyone out there whose job title is mental health champion and that's what they get paid for. No, it's a volunteer role. It's people giving hours out of their working day to deal with it, and they've still got to catch up on that work as well. Yeah, good point. So, financial stress. I mean, we're moving from topic to topic quite quickly here, but I've got a few things to fit in. But as you can see, there is this kind of clear link going on as well. And burnout. Burnout is one of those words that's kind of thrown around everywhere these days. Again, I'm going to paste a link to the chat there. We did a whole session on this, gosh, I think October or November last year, because we are really seeing this affecting not just individuals but organizations as well. That's why I say it is a prominent concern. Usually mental health concerns are still kind of lumped on us to deal with individually, but organizations are really starting to take notice of this burnout. It costs money to support staff who have reached such a point with their mental health that they cannot work anymore. And it's happening all over the world in all sorts of roles at all levels, junior and senior as well. I think it's exacerbated by workload. And please do let me know in the chat, what do you think in your workplace contributes to burnout? Workloads was always going to be top of the list there. There's lots of stuff under there. I could have written 1,000 subheadings under workloads, but would be here all week. But, there's a lot of stuff behind that, like, how supported am I by my manager? How well do I understand my workload? Do I know where my responsibilities with that work start and end? Things like that. Yeah, we've also got that lack of work-life balance pushing on us from both sides, and we'll talk about that in more detail. Communication, I think, really, really, really impacts burnout for many roles these days. How many of you are kind of contactable outside of hours by your colleagues? How many of you end up having those conversations outside of work, outside your working hours. It's pushing us all the time. And I think if that communication comes on email, instant messaging, it can be quite loud, it can be quite in your face. I mean, we call them notifications or alerts on our phones. Well, I don't really need to be notified of it if I'm not being paid to work right now, but I do get notified. Constant change and uncertainty, just on a real basic animal, psychological and neurological level. If there's change and uncertainty going on around us, we panic more, we feel more stress because we don't feel safe. And then that lack of support. Very often, all that's needed to prevent burnout in the workplace is someone to consistently check up on me. Not because I'm not good enough or not because I'm struggling, just check up on me because I'm your colleague. Check up on me because you're my manager, and part of your job is to check that I've got all the support I need. We've got a few answers in the chat here, so I want to come back to them. Anita says no downtime, constantly on the go, reduced breaks. Again, that communication as well. Yeah. Someone saying privately, I have to dive out. Something has come up that needs my immediate attention. Yeah, contributing to burnout. Can't focus on one thing at a time. Absolutely. Brand says, I keep every email or card or anything where someone has thanked me for a job I've done. Big morale booster. Really good way of combating that burnout there as well. Yeah, workload, Karen says, is a huge issue in the further education sector. I agree. Yeah. Fiona says the state of this government and what they're doing to the country, public services and our nation's mental health. Yeah, I do like sometimes thinking of the kind of mental health of a nation as a whole. And we're split really at the moment in that. Nicholas said, I found having a productive hour rather than trying to hit every item on the to-do list all day. Really good ideas, some really good tools and tips coming in here. And then Manda adds here, burnout and sickness of team members just adds to more stress on the remaining team. It's a perpetual problem. Okay, so how do we stick a kind of spanner in the spokes of that perpetual problem? We care for stress, right? We can't really do a huge amount of about sickness. Sickness is, a real difficult issue for most organizations at the moment. There is some serious sicknesses going around that are very easy to catch. However, if I can deal with and support stress at a low level, it doesn't become burnout, right? You wouldn't have a small fire in the office and go, oh, well, that's, it's only a small one. We'll deal with that later when it starts taking over a whole building. No, you deal with it straight away. We need to start thinking the same in terms of stress. If we spot a stressful environment in the workplace, we need to nip it in the bud really, really quickly, like immediately. Just like it's a fire. And we're going to come back to that when we're looking at ISO 45003. Gemma says high expectations and shared stress when everyone is understaffed or stressed. Yeah, Justina, constantly chasing people for responses. Yeah. Sam says unrealistic expectations and the reality of current pressures. Yeah, loads of really difficult things. I went for an hour's walk today in the winter sunlight here in London, had to force myself away from the desk and feel very refreshed, said Nicholas. Yeah, really good. Helen says, seeing other people skipping lunch, staying at their desks from 9 to 6, does make me feel bad if I go away from my desk. Really important part in there, Helena. You're actually doing something that should be celebrated by your colleagues, by your organization, and by us as a community of people that care about mental health. So I'm going to do that now and celebrate it. Well done for stepping away from your desk, even when those around you can't. It shows something. If you can go one step extra, depends how brave you're feeling. There's a few rounds of applause coming in for you there, Helena. Good. If you can go one step further and tell people, I'm stepping away from my desk for lunch, I think that really displays, kind of models best behavior to people there. Yeah. Wayne says everyone wants answers yesterday. Yeah, that's a big contributor to burnout in a lot of organizations. Good. I know, again, we're skipping on through topics pretty quickly. This one's a fiery one. I know it is. This is the one that I think most organizations are going to have a real struggle with over the next 12 months. The headline of returning to the office and hybrid working and all of that is its change and uncertainty. We used to do something in a very different way Some people have asked some really good questions as to why we all went into offices all the time with the technology we have, and they're useful questions to ask. But we are dealing with change and uncertainty. And we know that as animals, that's really difficult for us to do. So let me know in the chat, how well is your organization handling returning to work or the pressures of hybrid working? Is it bringing any particular issues that you can see? Because we are obviously, we're dealing with human beings here. We're going to get varied responses. And there's this strange kind of, I don't know if this phrase makes sense to anyone, a locus of power. So like usually in the workplace, the locus of power is on the senior leadership, right? And they're saying, this is the job, this is how it's done, get on with it. And we were kind of used to that for a long time. And then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden, this is the job and this is how you do it went out the window. Everyone started to carry on doing the jobs they did, usually out of a lot of goodwill and hard work, adapted, changed, overcame all sorts of really difficult pressures and stresses and got on with it. And then all of a sudden, the locus of power became a bit more with members of staff. And now organizational leadership are having to kind of think about how to ask or tell or force people back into some new kind of model again. So of course we're going to get varied responses because we don't really know who's in charge here and whose kind of word is the say so. It's not really easy to mediate this in teams and organizations because we have lots of people, and with people comes difference, thankfully. Policies have to be set on this. I know that's a tough thing for us to talk about, but you've kind of got to know where your staff are if you're paying them and kind of what they're up to, which is really tough because then we start bringing trust or lack of trust into the conversation. So we have to be careful how we communicate these kind of things, and the needs of different teams and different departments will vary. Some roles will have to be back on site because the site is providing services on site again. Some will have a bit more flexibility, and then we bring inequality into it as well. And it introduces those lack of power and control feelings. Now, change and uncertainty, headline up there, right? That is difficult for human beings. If you add change and uncertainty to a feeling like I'm not in control or in power, as an animal, I am liable to freak out. If I feel like there's uncertain things going on and I'm not in a position of power to keep myself safe, yeah, of course emotions run high on this as a topic. It's about people's safety at the end of the day. So I'm going to come to chat because I know that we're going to have some really good responses in here. Keep them coming. Angela's kicked us off. Resentment of those who can work from home versus those who cannot. So why does our resentment go towards the people? They didn't choose that role. They didn't choose that to be the rules around their role. That's just how things are at the moment. Yet human beings, we love finding, the other problem elsewhere. The problem isn't with the people who don't have to work in the office. There might be some luck involved. There might be some changes in judgment. Some people might have, been quite careful and clever with it, but they shouldn't have the resentment focused towards them. They're just going about their business and doing their job in the way that they're supposed to do it. But it's really tough to know where else to go with these kind of frustrations, I guess we get. Hannah says, this is my first job and hybrid working is part of my work adjustments due to ASD. It can be too quiet in the office, but it's nice to have 2 days when I don't have to wake up early to travel. And what helps us, Hannah, is routine, right? If I've got a routine and I know that, Wednesdays and Thursdays are my days in the office, I can start having a life around it. But if that keeps constantly chopping and changing, it can be really difficult for a lot of us. Congratulations on your first job as well, Hannah. Thank you for being here. It's really nice to think of people in their first job coming and thinking about mental health as well. I think that's a really positive sign for the future too. So especially good to have you here. Amanda says, we are hybrid working roughly 60-40%. However, some staff are very adverse to returning to office. Very difficult to maintain fairness and relationships. Absolutely. I can already see there, Amanda, in your response, there's a lack of clarity. Roughly 60-40, some people are adverse to it. So we're doing things with people that they don't want us to do, and yet we kind of have to. It's a tough situation to be in. I haven't got any really good answers to this, by the way. So This is hopefully just a bit of a venting session, but let's see if anything comes out of it. Miranda says, I hate working from home. I find it lonely and boring. I get distracted very easily, but my office is an hour and a half from my house. So hybrid working has enabled me to do a job I would not have been able to do if I had to do that job, that commute every day. Very conflicting. Yeah, it is. Gosh, it's a real kind of tongue twister of one as well. There's a lot of different things affecting you in that situation. Laura says, I feel that people who have worked from home for a protracted period have developed work habits that have become hard to break. Absolutely. But they're not work habits. They're basically processes. Each one of us was sent out of the kind of, I don't know, safety of our home base in an office where we followed all these processes and procedures to chaos. The pandemic for most organizations was chaos. It was just trying to keep things going in any way we could. So people developed these work habits, but it's their systems and processes. They just had to do it with less technology and with less influence from other people. So yeah, we're going to have to unpick a few things coming back. Yeah. Manjit says currently working remotely, but unsure of any change in that in the near future. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You don't even know if you're going to be where you are next week sometimes. Amanda says, I've observed an improvement in morale and general happiness in those that are working on site. Good to hear. Nikki says, we have a flexible working policy, but some see it as a policy just to keep working from home without speaking to managers about what is best. Right. And if the leaders don't encourage those managers or even mandate that those managers have a what works best conversation with each member of staff, again, we're back to that locus of control. Who's in charge here? Who's making the ultimate decision about what works best for the organization? No one really knows. Liz has put a really good reminder in there. Make sure you take your breaks. I have a dog, so I have to take him out for walks regularly, time away from my desk. Yeah. Wow, lots of really good stuff here. I'm not going to be able to get to them all, but please keep this conversation going. The more of this conversation you're able to have in your workplace, the better. That's my biggest suggestion here. I had a conversation with a group of one of the journalism organizations we support in the US last week. And they are a group of peer supporters, peer-to-peer supporters that I supervise as a clinician. So I meet with them once a month, check in on how they're doing, but also check in on the kind of trends that they're noticing in the workplace. And this conversation came up about what's better, being at home or being in the office, or some combination of the two. And what really struck me during that conversation is I'm not the one who needs to hear this. The organization needs to hear what it's doing to people, because we are going to have varied responses because we are individuals. So we need to have those heard out, I guess. Susie says, I started my job remotely and have found working at home far more stressful due to the online meeting culture and no breaks. Yeah, I have days of that too. And it really reminds me of how much of a break being in the office can be from that always on feeling. Yeah. Someone says here privately, I've had an individual risk assessment drawn up to try and accommodate work and my health. But I've also emphasized that if I'm unable to come in more than 2 days a week, then I will work from home and not push myself. But it sounds like what you've been able to do there is have a really explicit, open conversation about your needs. Yeah. Nicholas says, we're starting to have more regular on-site meetings and social activities so we can meet up more often. Good. But this conversation will be ongoing. And I think we might do a specific one of these webinars again on this kind of returning to the office and hybrid working. We've talked a lot about this, so I won't spend too much time on work-life balance. But my question to you I think is an important one. How do we support each other at work to encourage balance? Again, locus of control. Who's in charge here? Who is telling me or supporting me or helping me in finding the balance I need in my life? Because it's harder to find balance during periods of uncertainty. And that's why I chose this picture. We don't know what that last stone is going to do to that balancing block. Is it going to stay balanced or is it going to fall over? And we've had years of it. We've had years and years of change and uncertainty and risk and fear and anxiety. Changing work practices, like we've just discussed, will make it harder for people to settle. I can't find a balance if I don't know how much work is going to ask of me this week. And yes, the biggest kind of recommendation around this is to set some boundaries and be really clear, but those are difficult for many of us. It's very difficult for me to go to my manager and say, hey, I need to set some rules for how you understand the way I work. And if work's affecting the balance, who do I go to? I haven't got anyone I can have that conversation with. Let's see. Oh, Ellie's saying agree, RTO and hybrid session would be great. Good. I'll get working on that, maybe for February. Oh, yeah. Someone said here, I've asked my team to remove the Teams app from their phone. They weren't expecting that. Beautiful. Yeah, just a little reminder about some of the things we can let go then. And this might be some of the negotiation around returning to the office. Okay, you'd like me in the office 2 days a week. That means 2 evenings a week, I'll be leaving my laptop and my work phone at the office. So you won't be able to get in touch with me out of hours. See how well that conversation goes down. Because I think a lot of organizations have carried on the goodwill of people overworking, pushing their working hours out as well. Quaity says here, I'm still paranoid about mixing and I'm working from home on medical advice, but no others don't understand. I'm not only unable to work on site, but any other interaction is not possible. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm just going to adjust, if you don't mind, slightly what you said. You're not paranoid. You are rightfully fearful of mixing with other people based on the medical advice you've been given. You are doing the right thing. The fact that other people don't understand is their problem and not yours. It's not your fault you're in the situation you're in. We're all collectively have some sort of influence over this, but none of us really can stop a pandemic in its tracks or any other health issue. So it's really good that you could share that with people. Miranda says, my partner and I share a home office because we don't have enough rooms to have one each, and have set a rule that we don't go into the office unless we're working. If we're not, the door is shut and it's out of bounds. Really good. Yeah, a bit of balance, a bit of boundary setting there. Ellie says, I think if everyone is mindful, don't send a Teams message 5 minutes before the end of the day, as that person may feel obligated to work a bit late for your question. Yeah, really good point. I can really help people with balance just by thinking about who I'm talking to and when. Susie says, work-life balance is discussed all the time in my work as it's such an issue for everyone. There's just so low capacity and the workload is too high. Yeah, I hear so many people at the moment talking about not even being able to take a holiday, not having the capacity in their team to allow them to take their annual leave. What else have we got? Ellie says, a lot of the team have flexible working signatures, i.e. they respond to emails at different times that suit them and they only expect to reply in the working hours. I think that's fine. I think work email should be allowed to carry on 24 hours a day if people wanted to. The problem is, I shouldn't expect it to ping on someone's phone. I shouldn't expect anyone to even be aware of it until they're in their working hours, and it's up to them to decide to reply. The problem is, I think, is that people have started using email for more immediate, urgent need communication. Like, oh, I'll just fire off an email to Harry because I need something done today. That's, think of email as writing me a letter, and I might be, off, I don't know, tending to the garden. I'll get back to you in a few days, right? If you need me urgently, you can phone me. If my phone's off, I'm not working. Should be nice and simple like that, really. Hannah says, I think having something outside of work that I can look forward to that is not the gym is really helpful. Yeah, I agree too. Justina says, whenever I organize online meetings, I never book them back to back. I always make sure there's at least 15-minute break between the meetings. Good. Simon says, although holiday is required by all, however, the dread of what you are going to come back to always causes me anxiety. And on the last evening of holiday, I usually log in to know what I'm going back to. Yeah. How does that affect your holiday, Simon, is my question. Probably a fair amount, if it's getting to that kind of stage. I think the only people we can talk to about that are the other people in our team. I think we have to find a way. I've got a completely vital member of my team taking 2 weeks of very deserved leave starting tomorrow. And, what can we do to support that person to entirely switch off? Well, we can let them know what they can pass over. And we'll do the same, by the way. When it's my time for a holiday, I'll be passing stuff on to them as well. But we need to be explicit about it, not just going, Oh crap, that person's on leave for 2 weeks now. What are we going to do? Yeah. Simon says, not relaxing come the end of the week. Unfortunately, no one picks up others' work. I never take a 2 week break. So that might be a good conversation to have in the team. So I'd love us all to be able to take 2 week breaks every now and then. How do we make that work? It shouldn't all be on one person. Cool. Then the last topic I wanted to talk to you about was one that you might not have heard of, but I kind of trailed it at the beginning here of ISO 45003. Let me know in the chat, by the way, if you've heard of ISO 45003 or if I'm bringing you something completely new. So many of you will know that there are kind of standards for health and safety in the workplace. One of those is ISO 45001. You will have heard of ISO 45001 because you will see posters all over every office that says, risk, health and safety in the workplace, right? And the idea is that if there's a fire or if there's a live, I don't know, a live electrical cable hanging from the ceiling, someone will do something about it, right? There's a kind of logging procedure for there being a risk or an incident. It's followed up, it's resolved, and then the place is made safe again. Well, ISO 45003, you'll be pleased to hear, and people that have been to these sessions before will know I'm pleased to hear, is bringing that parity between physical safety and psychological safety much closer together. So ISO 45003 is a set of guidance, rules, and tools to provide a global standard giving practical guidance on managing psychological health and safety at work. So someone said earlier in the chat, I can't quite remember who it was, about the emotional impact of the work that they do. They work in animal welfare, right? Normally, people that work in animal welfare care a lot about animals. If part of your role is that you work with abused, neglected animals, that's going to have an emotional impact. That's not about you as a person, that's anyone that we put in that role. So this is where this is really exciting and interesting to me, because it takes away the focus from the individual. It's not you're being affected by the work you're doing, it's the work you're doing affects the people doing the work. Maybe I've tied myself into circles there, but it makes sense here. Watch out for vicarious trauma. I've been there, right? And they call it vicarious trauma, like I don't know, peeping through the crack in the fence to see something terrible happening. No, I'm being impacted by it too. So have a little think now. Think about your organization, the people you work with, the different roles. What roles in your organization do you think are most exposed to psychological harm? Not the people, but what roles could someone do in your organization? So I hear from the introduction, we've got quite a few people from Babcock here. Some of you work in, I don't know, the people that work in Babcock offshore working with helicopter rescue services, right? They are at risk of psychological harm. They are going to road traffic accidents. They're going to, difficult events to be first responders. So that's not about them as individuals. It's about that role has psychological risk in it. Just like there's physical risk, they'll have had proper training to be able to be in a helicopter. So they should probably have proper training to be dealing with these kind of emotionally draining events. Okay, yeah, someone says here, social media manager. They've said it privately. When you think of social media manager, you don't think, oh, that's a traumatic role or one that exposes you to psychological risk, but think about it. Do you see everyone being really kind to each other on social media? Do you see sometimes organizations being attacked for what they do and who they are on social media? Well, there's a person behind that account. There's a person just going about their job behind that account, and they can be affected by it. Kevin says vicarious trauma is inevitable when working with trauma. There should be policies and plans in place. And Kevin, that's exactly what ISO 45003 demands. It demands that if there's an inevitable vicarious trauma in your role, then yes, absolutely, there should be policies and plans in place. Rimmer says colleagues in reading rooms. Yes. Robert says we have a CCTV control room so the operatives can be exposed to images and situations. Perfect. Yeah. I'll be looking into us working towards this standard. Good to hear. Someone said privately, health and safety teams. Yeah, the people that deal with every incident, well-being champions. Simon, good one, being a first aider. Yes. Miranda, anyone monitoring for or who would have to deal with a disease incursion in livestock, having to deal with potentially not only the animal consequences, but also farmers facing the loss of livelihoods. Brilliant. Justina, air ambulance, pilots and air crew. Miranda, press-facing communications teams. Beautiful. Nicholas, urgent treatment centre staff. Exactly. All of these are the roles that we should start to be looking at and making sure that they are psychologically safe. Because no doubt, somewhere in your organization, there's someone in a role that's exposed to this. And if they're not cared for properly, it has impacts on your work and the work around them as well. Oh, someone shared something quite personal. Here, it's my anniversary of their dad's death today. I changed my role as a nurse as coping with end of life and cancer was too much. Right. And perhaps had you been given the support and the kind of help needed for that by the organization, you might still be a nurse. We might still be benefiting from that. Thank you for sharing that. Karen says, most people working in my field of education, absolutely. Someone says, privately, consular officials supporting members of the British public and their families. Yeah, so we do a lot of work with the FCDO here at CiC. And we have, because of this, actually your organisation is a little bit ahead of ISO 45003. Anyone in those roles has a regular mandated checkup with a therapist. Not because of them as individuals, but because of the roles they're in supporting the British public and their families in some pretty difficult situations abroad. Yeah. Laura says research and fact checking during breaking news in a newsroom. Example, during shootings in the US. Yeah, so those of you that know the work I do, my specialism is working with journalists and trauma. We're doing a lot of work with the media organizations we support exactly on this. Yeah. And often people first think of, the reporters that physically go out to, war correspondents or people covering the actions in person, but especially those working on social media, they might never leave the office. And if we bring hybrid working into this, they might be doing it at home. You might be bringing that imagery and that experience into your home with your family around. Hi, Ross. Hi from the SCDO. Nice to see you. So yeah, there are varied roles, and we have to start looking at them in a bit more of a structured way as well. Someone said privately, will this cover aspects of mental health also, anxiety and depression? So yes, depending on how the role is exposed to what they call psychosocial risk, yes, there will be. I will put in here, where is my, I know I've got a link to it somewhere, here we are. You can actually read the whole standard. It's not mandatory and it's not law yet, but here it is. This is the standard, and you can read all the details about it, about what organizations should be doing to support those people that are at risk of psychological harm. And one of the things we're doing to help organizations with this at CiC is we're putting together a package of organizational risk assessment, so that actually we can come in as a kind of external organization, hopefully unbiased, and speak to you as an organization, speak to your department, speak to your roles, and see where those psychological risks might be. Cool. So some difficult things for us to consider this year, but also some hope as well in that change is coming. And I think that hope's been a little reflected here, certainly for me, in all the support that you're showing each other in the chat here. It doesn't have to be through these rigid channels that we get the support we need for our well-being and our mental health. Reach out to people who work in similar roles in other organizations. This is the power of hybrid working and being online as we are. Create an online community of people that are like you or do jobs like you, so you can share tools and tips and ideas and support each other. Peer-to-peer support is so powerful for a lot of what we experience in the workplace. I've put together a kind of list of a few kind of contributing factors to all of these. So take a look at one of these. And let me know in the chat if there's anything you'd add to this list. But if you can take a look and choose one of these that you're experiencing and try and make it your focus for the 2023, your focus is to minimize as much of this as possible. Someone's just asked me privately if you'll get a copy of the slides. I can't give out a copy of the slides to everyone because I don't know how to get in touch with you all by the way that we set these up. But there's another link to the YouTube channel in the chat. You can go back and watch the recording and take whatever content you'd like from it. So if you can have a look at these, for me, it's definitely going to be that relentless pace of work. I need to be on, and I need to be 24/7 on call sometimes, but it's not, the 7 bit can go away, right? When I'm on call, I need everyone to know I'm on call, and I need to be able to know and let people know when I'm switching off from that as well. Chris has put here, productivity guilt is the big one for me and a bit of a lack of connection. Good. And I think it might have helped you, Chris, to have write that down and send it as a message. That's a good way of setting that intention for yourself. Yeah. And it's just an intention. Look, we're not in control of all of these things, right? I'm not in control of what communication methods my organization uses or what boundaries they set. I'm not in control of the chaos that sometimes comes with the line of work that I'm in, but I can pay attention to how I respond to those situations. Yes, Sam, IT issues can cause major stress. I think you're absolutely right. I think some IT departments have been the absolute saviors of many organizations throughout the pandemic. CiC is an organization that provides in the moment 24-hour support to millions of people. We relied on our IT department. For a good 2 weeks, things were looking a little shaky when the pandemic hit, and suddenly we weren't at our phone lines physically in our office that, you know, came through on an actual piece of wire into an actual building. All of that change happened really quickly, with some people probably working out of hours, working extra hard to get that done for us. So yeah, I think that we need to celebrate the IT departments that have supported us through this move to everything being online, and yeah, try and support them in not having so many big issues that affect everyone as well. Hannah says, would unclear communications and boundaries include unwritten workplace rules? That is precisely what I'm talking about there, Hannah. Yes. So if you're in one of those organizations where it's really unclear what working from home looks like or what being in the office should look like, yeah, that's when I mean that unclear communication and boundaries. Again, it's more uncertainty. I'm looking to my organization to give me some rules, give me some boundaries. We need that sometimes. And if it's not clear, yeah, I'm in more of that change and uncertainty. MH says that, Chris, don't be so hard on yourself. You're human, and we can't all be at optimum performance all of the time. Others may seem to be, but they all have their days off too. Yeah, and look, if I'm feeling extra judgmental about my productivity, guess what I see in everyone else? I see them all being absolutely perfect, and there's nothing wrong with it. The thing that I link this to, and this is might show a bit too much about my experience, but when I was younger, my parents always used to, like, when I was misbehaving, they would point out other kids that were being really well behaved. And so, well, yeah, they're being well behaved right now, but you don't see them 24 hours a day. I think it goes the same with that productivity. If I'm looking to find an example of someone being better than me, I'll find it. It's not a competition. Productivity at work is not a competition. It's about our own needs as well as the organizational needs as well. So many good intentions being set here in chat as well. Yeah. Carly says, I have productivity guilt. I know I'm not working as well as I could because I don't feel enthusiastic about my current tasks. They just don't feel important. I've discussed with my manager, but it's an ongoing thing. Okay, it's an ongoing thing. Good that you've discussed it with your manager. My biggest recommendation there is, can you kind of give it to your manager as a task and be like, I need to know a little bit more about, you know, I need to find some more of this enthusiasm, and I need your help with this. You know, can we meet again in 2 weeks? Kind of getting that kind of regular check-in going as well. Yeah, Ross is agreeing with you there, Carly. Yeah, cool. But look, I'm going to repeat some of my favorite tips here. They're not going to be a surprise to any of you that have been to my sessions before, and they shouldn't be a surprise to anyone anyway. These are the human things that help us, but talking. Real conversation about you, your life, your needs, wants, emotions, and difficulties makes it far easier to notice when things are uncertain or changing. Some of you might have felt that a little today by sharing a bit of your experience in the chat here. Prioritize. Sometimes you need to come first. even if it is just your body or an hour to yourself. Self-care is not selfish, it's self-preservation. Get creative, little creative things that we can do. Um, I'm going to fix a laptop this evening. That's what I've set aside for myself to do tonight. I really enjoy doing really practical things like that. Yes, someone's added privately here, drink water. Yeah, that's why I chose that picture. Maybe that person's about to take a big drink as well. Oh, yeah, Sam's added a good one here. Celebrating the wins. Yeah, celebrate the positives as well. Yeah, looking to positive stories and positive people. And look, exercise and rest, dumb animal stuff, but we're dealing with dumb animal things here. If we're dealing with change and uncertainty, a lot of the stress and anxiety and depression that brings on is natural animal reactions. If I can exercise, eat, and rest well, it'll go a long way to helping. It's not going to solve all the problems, it'll go a long way to helping. Cool. Given that the title and most of the topic of this has been about kind of overworking and prioritizing and things, I think we should try and give ourselves a little bit of an extra break at the end of the day today. So I'm not going to go specifically and ask for any questions, but I'm just going to remind you of the support that's available. All of you as CiC customers can access all of our services online at Well Online. Please go and have a look there first. I'll put the link to it in the chat here. You should have your email, your login name and password. It's the same for everyone in your organization. If you don't, go and speak to HR. They should be able to give it to you. Practice what I preach, this Miranda. Yeah. If you are looking for more, if you go to our corporate website at the bottom of the page there's a link to sign up to our newsletter. You'll get reminded of these monthly webinars there, and you'll get some of our more kind of written content around mental health. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. All you'll get is a notification once a month to say that we've uploaded a new video, just in case you miss any of these. If you are a customer and you'd like to talk about more training group sessions, or even if you'd like to talk about our psychological risk assessments for organizations, particularly regarding that ISO 45003, just get in touch with your account manager. And if you've never heard of CiC before and somehow you ended up here, go and have a look at our website, find out more about us if you're interested. I want to thank you all as an audience again for being here. It's so wonderful to have so many of you supporting each other here. I like the idea of me setting the boundary of this is when we're going to start and this is when we're going to finish, and you're all doing most of the work in between. So thank you so much for it. If you do have any kind of burning questions, let me know in the chat. If you are done for the day, please leave. Thank you so much. And yeah, hope to see you all again soon. For those of you watching on the recording, goodbye and thank you for watching.